Good morning. Weather-wise, well, we've had a variety of conditions here this morning. It's a cool morning start for most of the state with a little bit of rain left over in the far southeast. I'll show you that in just a second here, but quite a few odds and ends to go through looking at the last week, which has been interesting. And then the gist of the forecast is, I think the theme clearly here is going to be one which we're gradually warmer and mostly dry for the upcoming week. And so the warm dry we talked about this last week. That certainly looks like what we'll see at least for the next one, maybe 2 weeks. But warmer than normal is another theme that we're seeing in the forecast guidance here, looking out through well, almost through the end of the month. I do want to start though looking at the last several days, and depending on where you were in the state, some somewhat unusual weather, and obviously weather that caused at least temporary delays with persistent rain, cool conditions, many places a stiff northeasterly wind with cooler than normal conditions. Why do we see that? This is the little bit of meteorology 101 here, but we had a feature here in the Great Lakes region, something called, it's referred to as a cutoff low. And on the left-hand side here, this is looking at upper air conditions, the upper troposphere. So basically the jet stream flow, this is actually at the bottom of it. And these black lines here show the higher and lower pressure systems here, and the wind flow is essentially parallel to those black lines. And what we find with these so-called cutoff low features that we see on occasion is basically a circular flow, and that's what you see here on the right-hand side here. I've sort of highlighted this area with a circulation feature, and it's counterclockwise rotation there. But it's the key is that feature is cut off from the main branch of the jet stream. And if you look up to our north, up in southern Canada, you can see those other lines up here. That's the main branch of the polar jet stream, which of course goes all the way around the hemisphere, generally from west to east. That's how the system works. There's one in both the north hemisphere and one in the south hemisphere. And as we all know, we spend so much time talking about this in the mid latitudes and certainly here in the Midwest. Forecasting and understanding what that jet stream, what the patterns in that is the key to looking at day to day and even week to week weather variability. But in this case, we have these features, and there's actually a second one out here in the western U.S. at the same time. This was taken from, by the way, from Monday during this event. But once in a while, these features they become detached or cut off from the main branch of the jet stream, like you see here over the Great Lakes. And the issue is that they can persist in the same area for longer than is typically the case, because most of the time we're seeing features, the ridges and troughs here moving, typically west to east across North America. And again, that's the key to our forecast. But on occasion we see these features develop here, these cutoffs, and they sit there and they cause a persistent pattern. We'll call it unsettled weather. It's lower pressure here. We typically see cloudiness, precipitation, cooler than normal temperatures are associated with these. And I did some research here a number of years ago looking at the frequency of these events. They don't happen that often, but most typical during the spring, during the months of April and May, and also then again in the fall. That's when we tend to see them in the Midwestern U.S. more often than not. They can happen any season, but that's when they're by far they're most common. But the other thing is too, that's important to note, is that despite the advances in the science of predicting weather, and looking at increasing accuracy of short-term forecasts, the models don't do well with these features. They never have. It's always and typically they move them out or dissipate them more quickly than is the case in reality. And so make liar of a meteorologist. That's another way you can think of this. But they're complicated and they're difficult to forecast. Well, we had one of these features here from the last weekend and into this week, and that is the reason we saw some of the unusual weather that we did with, again, with the cold northeasterly winds. While other parts of the state, in the northwestern part of the state, for example, on the day Sunday, we had temperatures into the 70s. And then down in the south, where we had the cutoff low sitting closer, we had rain the whole day, cool, really, well, abnormally cool temperatures for the day. And this is the reason for that. On the right-hand side here, I've got a radar picture taken from the same time. This is again on actually during the day on Monday, and I put some arrows here. And this is one of the other things you may have seen with this is looking, hey, the precip is coming from the east and moving west. And remember, we said, well, most of our weather moves in the Midwest from west to east, and that yes, that is definitely the case. But these cutoff lows change the situation, and we see a reversal, and that's why we saw again unusual conditions. So we had a visit from again a cutoff low for several days. It was here. It is now moved, has moved out of the region, so we're looking at something different. But many parts of the state, and looking here at our weekly totals, look at the rainfall totals down in the southeast. 2 to as much as 3 inches of rain, and it fell over many hours. It wasn't just a downpour over a 15-minute time frame. Most of these events we saw certainly during the day on Sunday, again on Monday, and even on a little bit on Tuesday, we saw persistent rain in certain areas, and that cutoff low was the reason why. Rainfall for the previous week, though, note the heaviest was certainly in the southeast, and it has shut down most fieldwork operations there, but significantly drier as you go north and west. Less than half an inch, less than a quarter of an inch, actually, in portions of western upper Michigan. For temperatures, the mean temperatures here on the left, it was near to cooler than normal week across much of the region. You can see the greens here again, about 1 to as much as 3 degrees below normal, especially for northern lower Michigan. Near normal elsewhere across the south and portions of upper Michigan, even a little bit of warmer than normal in the far western UP. And that has led to some significant changes in soil moisture here as we look. This is looking at the top 3 feet of the soil profile. So the large profile here, but in the southeast, a lot of new green and blue area here indicating much wetter than normal conditions. But note in contrast here, still across central lower Michigan, especially the Saginaw Bay, Saginaw Valley area, we still have lots of browns and oranges here, or brown and sort of reddish color here. Long-term dryness. That's been there since last fall, and it continues. But that's really relatively the driest area of the state. Most of the rest of the state, we're at least normal, if not even a little wetter than normal, especially given the rainfall and the precipitation we had over the last week. Our degree day totals looking here, base 50. These are the totals from the beginning of March. Same pattern with a little bit, for many areas, a little cooler than normal week, but still up above 250 units now for much of southern lower Michigan. But note the pattern we've had all spring season so far, much behind or below normal as you go north, less than 50 units up in the far north, which has resulted in, again, a very unusual situation in Michigan where we have phenologically our overwintering crops are lagging behind normal in the northern part of the state, but because of the surpluses in the south and warmer conditions there, we actually are advanced. In some cases, as much almost as 1.5 to 2 calendar weeks ahead of normal. So big differences remain phenologically across the state because of that pattern. Well, this morning, let's look quickly at a forecast. This is looking at a surface map, and it's a little difficult to see. Apologize for the size of the black numbers here. Those are air temperatures. It was, as I mentioned, a cold start to the day. Some sub-freezing temperatures especially up in the Upper Peninsula, some upper 20s and low 30s. It's generally in the 30s to the mid 40s and upper 40s in the south. And note also down here at the bottom, this is a radar image here. We still have some lingering light rain from the frontal passage that went through the state late yesterday and is just clearing the state. That should be out of the way here over the next couple of hours, but we still do have some light rain reported down in the far southeastern section of the state, but dry and cold north. Our surface map this morning, big H here over Ontario, big area of high pressure. It is a Canadian origin air mass. It's a cool air mass, and that's basically going to be the dominant feature for us for the next 24 to 36 hours. But it is going to be moving off to the east and set the stage for a significant warming trend, really beginning tomorrow and into Saturday. Weather system you see to the south here down over the middle Mississippi Valley, that's going to remain to our south. Again, the last precip with this feature down in the southeast, that should shift out of the state in the next couple of hours. But until then, we will have one more with the high pressure over the region. We will have one more pretty chilly night here. And these are the forecast minimum temperatures for tomorrow morning. And once again, you can see some near or slightly sub-freezing values across, especially across the interior northern lower. There's a frost freeze advisory for that part of the state here from the National Weather Service. But in general, most of the areas of the state in the low 30s, the mid 30s. So we will see the possibility of some frost. But for most areas, save again, interior areas of northern lower and interior areas of upper Michigan, it should be scattered and not a hard freeze type of condition. Just again, mostly low-lying areas and not widespread in nature. That will be tomorrow morning will be the coldest morning, certainly of the upcoming week. So we look ahead, again, still high pressure here on Friday. So another relatively cool day, but it will be a few degrees warmer tomorrow than it is today. Upper 50s to low 60s is as good as we're going to get here today, but we will see clearing skies and fair conditions, dry conditions develop. The same is the case tomorrow, sunny skies, but several degrees warmer, 60s, mid to upper 60s in most parts of the state for high. The exception would be western upper Michigan, where it's going to do even better than that. They'll probably see a few 70s up there as we start to get some return flow around from the southwest. And then finally by Saturday, more dry weather expected. There's a frontal boundary coming through. It has no moisture to work with, though, at all. There may be a sprinkle or two in the far northern part of the state, but most of us will remain dry. But Saturday, you will notice a significant warming. We should be back up above 70 degrees for high temperatures for most of the state, and at that, or even a couple degrees more than that on Sunday and into Monday. And we're looking at highs by the end of the weekend in the upper 70s to near 80. And that's again, so big changes here coming just around the corner, and virtually no precipitation in our forecast at all. Really, the next chance for anything probably not coming until next Tuesday or Wednesday at best. Here's the forecast totals here for the upcoming week. And you can see for Michigan, there's even some whites in here. Little or no precipitation is forecast, at least in our guidance. Certainly less than a quarter of an inch at best. And even that's going to be scattered at best. So we're looking at a gradually, certainly a dry week, and with increasing temperatures getting gradually warmer. This is the first map of our potential evapotranspiration. And I put of course, we usually look at this when we look at water needs and potentially for irrigation. But I put it here this today because we do have above normal PET rates that are expected. Again, that's the amount of evapotranspiration that could take place because of the weather conditions. It's going to be above normal. And so generally from about 15 hundredths of an inch to about 18 hundredths of an inch on average per day with a warm, dry period. So the bottom line is here what to expect. Things are going to dry quickly. We'll see relatively rapid changes in soil conditions because of this elevated PET as things go on. So thinking about here, the folks in central and southeastern parts of the state that had all of the rain recently, things will be hopefully changing fairly rapidly. So keep an eye on that because it may be ready to go earlier than you would normally expect in a place like Michigan. And finally, looking here ahead into the medium range, the forecast outlook for the jet stream here looks for a big ridge over the middle and eastern part of the country, a trough out over the west. Very, very high likelihood of warmer than normal conditions. Same is true for the 8 to 14 day time frame. Precip, I should note here that there's a little bit of a shift in the precip guidance as of late. It was looking warmer and drier than normal, and that's certainly going to be the case in the upcoming week and maybe 10 days. But beyond that, the guidance suggests for a little bit more active storm track through the Midwest because of that trough out in the west, and so more precip, but still warmer than normal conditions. I think that's the key message here is that this guidance really strongly suggests that May is going to end up being, despite what it is this morning and tomorrow morning, but it is going to be a warmer than normal month, and there should be lots and lots of opportunities given that outlook, at least in terms of field work. So that I think is relatively good news for this time of the year. So wrapping up here, summarizing, fair and dry and cool here today, but definitely a warming trend coming for the next few days. And as we've talked about, drier than normal conditions, looking like a really nice, actually a beautiful weekend coming up here to be outside. And with higher than normal PET, we will see changes soil moisture wise fairly quickly, and hopefully field work operations can commence and get back to some of the rates that we saw last week. And last thing, again, the medium range still strongly pointing in the direction of warmer than normal for much of the rest of May.